Imagine this. You're a Goth. No, not the black eyeliner and trench coat. Mafia kind and actual, honest-to-goodness, barbarian, axe-wielding, fur-wearing, slightly smelly warrior from the 3rd century CE. Life is rough, sure, but it's yours. You've got a cozy little village near the Danube River. Your goats don't complain too much. And every now and then, you raid a Roman outpost just to keep things interesting. Then suddenly, bam! Here come the Romans. Again. Because apparently, that's what they do. 1 minute, you're sharpening your sword, and the next, some guy in a red cape is shouting about Imperium while shoving you off your own land. And so begins one of history's great game-changing migrations, the forced displacement of the Goths due to Roman campaigns along the Danube. But don't worry, this isn't some dry history lecture. We're about to dive into a tale of betrayal, survival, double-crossing emperors, and one seriously bad river crossing. Let's set the scene. For centuries, Rome had a love-hate relationship with barbarians. Sometimes they were handy mercenaries. Other times, they were useful punching bags for glory-hungry generals. But the Goths? Oh, they were a special case. These folks had been chilling near the Danube River for ages, minding their own business, sort of, when Rome decided that actually their land would look much better with a few Roman fortresses. The Danube had always been a natural border between Rome and the barbarian lands, but the Romans being Romans couldn't resist pushing further. Around the 3rd century CE, the empire was going through its emo phase political chaos, assassinated emperors every Tuesday, and economic issues so bad that even the gladiators were demanding better wages. And when an empire is unstable, guess what they do? That's right, blame someone else. Roman emperors like Aurelian and later Diocletian decided that the Danube frontier needed to be more secure. Translation: we want your land, Goths. Over the years, they launched multiple campaigns, trying to subjugate the Goths or push them away from the riverbanks. This was classic Roman strategy. If they couldn't absorb a people into their empire, they'd either annihilate them or shove them onto someone else's doorstep. The Goths fought back, of course. They weren't about to hand over their lands just because some guy in a metal skirt said so. But Rome had professional armies, siege weapons, and that annoying habit of not knowing when to quit. The result? Gothic villages burned, warriors slaughtered, and thousands of displaced families forced to migrate further away from the Danube. And here's where things get even messier. With the Romans being a constant nightmare, the Goths had to move. And when you're an entire peopleman, women, children, livestock, you don't just hop on a boat and sail off to a nice vacation spot. Migration is brutal. It means famine, disease, and running into new enemies who are less than thrilled about unexpected house guests. The displaced Goths started pushing into new territories, which upset the local tribes. Imagine you just got home from a long day of farming, and suddenly 50,000 new people show up on your doorstep, looking very hungry and slightly aggressive. Not ideal. Some groups of Goths managed to regroup, forming powerful new alliances. Others were crushed by rival tribes or forced into Roman territory as refugees. Spoiler, that doesn't end well for them. By the time Emperor Valens came into the picture in the 4th century, the situation had spiraled into a full-blown humanitarian crisis, which leads us to the Great Roman Backstab of 376 CE. By the late 4th century, the Goths had reached a desperate situation. They approached the Roman Empire with an unusual request. Hey, instead of slaughtering us, how about letting us settle inside your borders? We'll even fight for you, Surprisingly, Rome agreed. Emperor Valens, being the genius that he was, thought, great, free soldiers. He allowed the Goths to cross the Danube and settle in Roman territory, but Rome, being Rome, couldn't just not be terrible. Once the Goths were inside, corrupt Roman officials took advantage of them, overtaxing them, stealing their food, and basically treating them like second-class citizens. This, as you can imagine, did not sit well. In 378 CE, the Goths decided they'd had enough and launched one of the most epic revenge stories in history. At the Battle of Adrianople, they utterly crushed the Roman army and killed Emperor Valens. It was a stunning defeat, one that signaled the beginning of the end for the Roman Empire. Now, if you've been paying attention, you might be wondering, what's the morale of this story? Well, aside from never trust Rome, history teaches us that forced displacement rarely ends well. The Romans thought they could just shove people around like pieces on a chessboard, but the Goths didn't just disappear, they came back stronger. Their displacement led to massive migrations, new power dynamics, and ultimately the weakening of Rome itself. So next time you hear about history's great migrations, remember the Goths. And if you ever find yourself in a position of power, maybe don't steal people's land and then treat them like garbage. Just a thought. Fast forward a bit, and guess what? The displaced Goths didn't just get revenge at Adrianople, they eventually sacked Rome itself in 410 CE under Alaric I. That's right, the same people that Rome tried to push out came back and wrecked the Eternal City. Talk about karma. And so, our story comes full circle. What started as a campaign to secure the Danube ended with barbarians partying in the streets of Rome. If only those old emperors had known that messing with the Goths would lead to the fall of their empire. Maybe they would have just let them keep their land. But hey, Rome was never famous for good decision-making. If you enjoyed this wild tale of Romans being Romans and Goths getting the last laugh, there's plenty more where that came from. History is packed with epic betrayals, unlikely heroes, and of course, the occasional empire getting what it deserves. Want more? Stick around. The past is just getting started.